So Matt, let's get into some more news stuff that sort of came out over the last couple of weeks. The big one here that we ran out of time last week was about iPads in 2022. So we are expecting, according to Mark Gurman, 3, I don't want to say new models, but I guess new models, updated models, a iPad Pro, iPad base model, and an iPad Air. So basically the iPad mini is not going to get an update. Surprisingly though, the base iPad just got an update, so I'm surprised to see that sort of back in the news cycle again with updates. And then the iPad Pro and iPad Air, obviously, it's time for those to get a bit of an update. So I guess sort of going off the rumors, according to Mark Gurman, what we know right now is that the iPad Pro will be getting a redesign, whatever that means, and then probably a glass back for wireless charging. So right off the bat, as we look ahead in 2022, what do you want to see with the iPad Pro, and what do you think we will see with the iPad Pro?
Yeah, so what do I want and what do I think are very different. And this kind of has always been the issue with the iPad, is that we want so many things that it seems like Apple's just not going to give us. But for want, I don't even care about the hardware. The hardware is great. Leave the hardware as is. Maybe bring mini LED down to the 11-inch iPad Pro if that is feasible and doable, which I feel like it is. Let's give it a shot. Let's do that, because that'd be really nice to have. Other than that, I think the internals are great. The battery life is still great. All that good stuff. I don't really care about the hardware that much, but we'll talk about that in a second. I want the updated software. Give us that. Make the M1 processor inside of these iPads actually live up to the name and like actually do something, because right now I never notice it. I have the iPad Pro 12.9 inch with that mini LED display, and the mini LED display is the only reason why I have that iPad. And if it wasn't for that, I would not have upgraded to the 2021. It has nothing to do with the M1 chip. So I want that software to finally happen. Is it going to happen? Probably not. Like I said, it's the year end or year old. Like every time WWDC is coming up or the new event's coming up, it's like, oh, we're gonna see Final Cut, we're gonna see Logic, we're gonna see something like that, and then it doesn't happen. So I mean, the hope is that there is some kind of grand master plan that Apple has in the back, because obviously, like, you got to think, like, if they're putting an M1 chip in this iPad, there's got to be a reason, right? It's not just like I guess the reason could be as simple as they have all these chips coming off the supply chain. Instead of making an A15Z, let's just use the M1 because we're already making them. It could be that simple, but I hope it's a little bit more than that. Now let's get to hardware real quick. Now that glass back, that is just so confusing. We've been kind of, discussing it behind the scenes, what that could be for. Obviously, the rumor is that this glass back is so that it can enable wireless charging. Okay, fine. Like, I'm not against wireless charging. It'd be nice to have, I guess. I would assume it would also have Magsafe. I don't know why it wouldn't have Magsafe, but also have wireless charging. But at the same time, having a glass back means probably it's going to get heavier, and I'm not really about that. If you've ever held a 12.9-inch iPad in a Magic Keyboard, it's already really heavy for what it is. So the hardware part, I don't know. I'm just confused about it.
Yeah, I guess... Is the glass back just going to be there to make it look different? Like we heard Mark Gurman says, redesign. I mean, okay, the bezels could get thinner around the display, but the front already is basically perfect. It's just the screen. And the back, I mean, I still think the design, even if it's mostly from 2018, still looks great going into 2022. I guess the glass back could be an aesthetic thing. Like, hey, look at, it's different. It looks better, quote unquote. But I guess to me, I'm a little concerned because wouldn't that make it a little bit more fragile? I guess because I'm always taking it in and out of my bag. I always take it to the gym with me, and I put it on the elliptical thing there. And I know one of these days, if I have a glass back on there, I'm going to just chip it and crack it. And that's the end of the back of that iPad. I just don't know what redesign means. Not saying that Apple shouldn't do something, but also I don't really think they need to. The iPad Pro has almost been so ahead of not just other iPads, but obviously all other tablets, that it still has a really good design. I think that all people really want would be better screen technology, bring mini LED down the line. At some point, obviously, we'll probably get OLED displays on there, which would be sort of the best case scenario. And that's it. Like you said, Matt, M2 processor in there, it makes sense. They'll probably do it. What the benefit to that is, I don't know, besides better efficiency and better power, but I don't understand what you could do in an iPad currently that's really going to take advantage of that M2. I guess if you're like editing in LumaFusion and you've got Photoshop and different apps running, I guess. But really, let's be honest, it's just weird. I don't understand why you put this Apple Silicon in there that is made for Macs in the iPad Pro if you're not going to allow it to run Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Full-Fledged Mac Apps. You've got all that power, and I feel like we can just barely scratch the surface of what you can do with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's still the question after all these years. I mean, the iPad Pro has been out for 5 years now, at least since the first one, right? So, I mean, this is something we have been waiting for, and it just hasn't happened yet. Going back to the glass back, though, I mean, I guess there are some questions there if they do go this route. So, one, what's going to happen to the smart connector? I believe the smart connector is rumored to be going away in this new redesign. I don't know if there's been any official, like Mark Gurman level rumors of that, but I've heard that at least. So if that's the case, what's going to happen with the keyboard? Is it going to use that wireless charging to then not only transfer power for the keyboard, but also transfer data? I mean, that's certainly possible. And then I had another point, but now I'm totally forgetting it.
So I guess in theory, let's say they did a glass back and they did Magsafe on there. Magsafe could be, right, the conduit that allows you to use these accessories. And can Magsafe transmit data, though? Because obviously, I guess in theory it could. I don't know if it currently does, but that keyboard needs to sort of translate commands from key presses to software. So I'm assuming Apple could do that, right?
I think Magsafe as it exists right now only does NFC data. I believe there's an NFC ring inside, and that's kind of what tells it, oh, this is a wallet, oh, this is a case, that kind of thing. That's the only communication I believe it's doing back and forth, aside from the obvious charging. And then I mean, maybe there's some other data, but I'm assuming that the phone is handling it when it comes to like the battery pack, where it knows to send power to the battery instead of taking power to the battery. I'm assuming that's all going on the phone. But yeah, I mean, there would probably have to be an update. But there is the rumor that Apple is really pivoting Magsafe to be the portless option of their iPhone whenever they decide to do that. So this could be the first iteration of that one Magsafe that not only charges but also wirelessly transmits, and started easy with keyboard commands. That's pretty simple. You just I mean, that's like just a few digits at a time. So it's like that seemed relatively easy. Then you work your way up to more data that eventually lets you get rid of the actual physical port, and you can just have this magnet on the back.
Well, I guess that would be super annoying to not only have to buy a new iPad, but then you got to buy, there's not a bunch of accessories, but the Magic Keyboard is one of those that if you have it and you like it,
so expensive.
You want it, and then it's expensive, so you have to buy a whole new version. And I guess the other thing, this has not been rumored, but maybe this makes sense. What if the first portless Apple product we see is the iPad Pro? Because on one hand, that's a great test case scenario for them because you don't have the wide audience of the iPhone 14 Pro. You don't have that pressure. Also, it's kind of annoying because I feel like I love the USB-C port on the iPad Pro and I wouldn't want to see it go away. But if there was to be one Apple product that would sort of make sense as a test case for it, would it be the iPad Pro? Do you think that we could see a portless iPad Pro in 2022?
No, but if they did that, let's just say they did, then that would solidify forever that this is never going to be a real Pro machine. Like they're using the Pro name as like a high end rather than professional tasks. And they put the M1 chip in there just because it's easier to manufacture because they're already making them. That answers that. If they did that, I don't think they will, especially considering they made kind of a big fuss that's now it supports Thunderbolts because of the M1 chip. So I don't think they're going to do that. Although I do see the argument that if they want to test not having a port on a device, doing it on an iPad makes a lot more sense than doing it on the iPhone. But I still think what's more likely is that they'll have like an iPhone 15 Pro Max or something. And that will only have one version that doesn't have a port, uses some kind of MagSafe on the back, and then every other iPhone will still have a port. I could see that being more likely than a completely different product line. I hope they don't do that because I still want those Pro apps.
Hey, you! Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Apple Circle podcast. If you want to check out the full episode, hit one of those videos right here, and also hit the other surprise video to see a surprise clip from the Apple Circle podcast. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and subscribe to the Apple Circle audio feeds and on all your favorite podcast platforms linked down below. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the main Apple Circle YouTube channel linked right down below.